Hey friends, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we read the exciting chapter of Numbers chapter 29. We're hoping our dog is going to behave. He must not be getting enough attention lately. In chapter 29, so yesterday what we read in 28 was like the day in and day out. God was telling them the sacrifices for just everyday living. Well, and then today in chapter 29, we move on to like the holidays, like the important standing times throughout the year where they will observe special times of offerings and sacrifices. And today we talked about the Festival of Trumpets, which is like the first day of the 7th month. It's the Jewish New Year. And what I think is really cool is if you're like me, you grew up with a paper calendar. In fact, I still keep a paper calendar. And it has like all these weird words that I always thought, what is that day? And I knew it didn't really apply to me. Well, guess what? It kind of does because I'm a Christ follower. I mean, I'm not Jewish, but the first day of the 7th month or the Jewish New Year is called Rosh Hashanah. And so that's what that interesting sounding word means. Well, then we talk about the Day of Atonement, and we've heard that, we've studied that. The Day of Atonement is also known as Yom Kippur. And this was the day, the one time of year where the high priest got to go into the Holy of Holies. And it was like an epic time with the scapegoat and the sacrificial goat. And then finally, we have the Festival of Shelters, when we remember what God has been doing all throughout Numbers. That's their time, how God has been with them every single step of the way while in the wilderness. And so while we're still talking about sacrifices, I am excited that these are our holidays. I love a holiday.
You do love a holiday.
I would rock it out if I was a Jewish person.
There would be a lot of decorations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. So whenever...
So you don't want to reenact with Orville?
No, we thought about pretending to do the lamb sacrifice with Orville right here because he's a tiny little white fluff. But then we figured out he'd probably fight back.
Yeah.
So, okay. A lot of these festivals, remember, the Jewish people really had about 3 festivals per year that they were supposed to schedule whenever they take part in these festivals. So whether it's the New Year or whether it's Passover or whether it's the Feast of Booths, you'll find these all in the New Testament. And by the way, they all point ahead to something in Christ. The newness we have in Christ, the new year, the Day of Atonement, where the lamb of the blood of the lamb is shed and sin is atoned for. That's that. Then you have this Feast of Tabernacles, which commemorates the 40 years in the wilderness. It's literally when the Jews would go outside their nice homes when they got in the Promised Land, and they would build a little tent or a little shelter, and they would live in it for 7 days to remind them of how far God has brought them. And what we get into is in each of these occasions, in these festivals, they were to do no work. So it was like a Sabbath day, but the Sabbath lasted the full length of the holiday. Now you got to understand, when God tells them not to do any work, like Sabbath work, He's not telling them to do nothing or to waste the day away. What He's telling them is that these are special times when the work of the world takes a back seat to the celebration of God. You'll also notice that the sacrifices they're giving during all of these festivals are in addition to the sacrifices they're doing on the other times. So if you went back to the previous chapter, and let's say there was a sacrifice you offered in the morning and the evening, and then let's say that on the Sabbath day you have that sacrifice, and then let's say that's the first day of the month, then you got another sacrifice, and then if that happens on some of these holidays, you're just piling these things on one another.
Had right? Something to say about that. He said, notice that the requirements for acceptable worship never decreases with the addition of special days and even weeks. It always increases.
That's right. He also says the many offerings and sacrifices required by the Israelites were costly, but the people's contributions toward these sacrifices could not compare with the grace that God had shown them by choosing them as His own people, redeeming them from bondage, and entering into a covenant relationship with them. I like how, like when you're reading the Feast of Tabernacles, it lists what you do in the 7 days. like the 7 days of creation, God is giving a rundown of what they're supposed to be doing. And it's a good reminder that whereas many of us live, I do this all the time. I live kind of put your head down and just get through the week so you get to the good stuff at the end. I love a weekend. I love a wrapping up. I love that. But in the Lord here, there was significance to every day. And so we ought not live our lives in a way where we're rushing our weeks away in order to get to our weekends versus we take every day as a gift and we find ways in every day to direct our hearts back to the Lord.
There's a phrase that I have as a stay-at-home mom that I've taken upon my own life. There is glory in the mundane, in that everyday life. God is in the midst of scrubbing toilets. God is in the midst of doing laundry in those everyday moments. You wouldn't know that.
No. we had a little girl at church the other day, and her and her grandma were up at the church, and Grandma said, "Tell Brother Dusty what you told me earlier." And she was talking about. She said, "I will do anything for God," but like they were cleaning the church. "I would do anything for God, but I am not going to scrub a toilet." And her grandma says, "Well, what if God told you to?" She said, "Well, I guess I would, but I would normally do anything except scrub a toilet." I go, "Well, I got that." Hey, notice this. Kind of my favorite piece to this puzzle is verse 40. This is how it ends. "So Moses told the children of Israel everything just as the Lord commanded Moses." Please understand, 40 years prior to this, God had called Moses to be his mouthpiece to the world, to the nations, and to lead the people. And do you remember what Moses said when God gave him this wonderful privilege? He said, "I am slow of tongue. I have never been a speaker. I am not a speaker. I don't think I can become a speaker. Please choose someone else." And now we find Moses, after leading for 40 years, used to Aaron would just kind of relay Moses' messages. Now he gone. But at this point, Moses is telling these people everything God had told him. He is doing what God called him to do. And I love the fact, look how far God has grown Moses. He prepared Moses 40 years as a prince and 40 years as a shepherd to lead and guide a flock through the wilderness. But over the last 40 years, he's also grown. He's grown from a guy who was scared to death to open his mouth in front of people to now he's giving these speeches in detail. Look at what God did in his life.
As Jax would say, Jesus is on a roll.
That's right. All right, we hope you're finding joy and little takeaways in the middle of this stuff that we go, "Oh, this is really doesn't pertain to me." No, listen. It's all pushing us ahead to Jesus, so it does pertain to us. So let's learn to love every day and live it loving God with all of our heart, our mind, our soul, and our strength, and our neighbor as ourselves. Every day matters. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.